So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll give you all a bit of a virtual wave there, so I can say hello. Yeah, thank you. Let me just get all my chat screens up. There we go. Thanks. Today, our webinar is going to be about organisational change, but that really sticks. It's probably very topical for a lot of people out there. It's formed a big part of my working life, and I'm quite comfortable to say I've done a great job at it, and I've done some pretty poor jobs at it as well. But I'm in a better position now to understand why, is what makes me feel comfortable. But look, let's start off with getting to know each other and seeing who's out there. Now, I know this isn't always comfortable for some people, but if you feel comfortable, just please use the chat function. Just tell us your name and just give us a bit of an idea of your interest in change topic. What's brought you here today? So whilst you're doing that, I will also do the same. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just clicking buttons away at my end, and tell you a little bit more about me. So you crack on, pop into the chat function, tell us who you are, and this is me in the meantime. I think I need to change this photograph because I always think, oh God, that's a bit of a cheesy grin that I've got there. But that's me. I'm Rhiannon, and I am the founder and the director here at Blue Grape. And I suppose, what are we, me and Blue Grape, really all about? Well, we're here. We enjoy helping growing businesses to, I suppose, improve their performance, develop amazing leaders, and maximise their people's potential. We really are all about getting the best out of your people. And I suppose there's two things that I've popped on the slides here that I really believe in, and I suppose have made a big difference, or and continues to make a difference as to how I work. These are my beliefs, the things that influence me, I suppose. I genuinely feel that people are awesome. We are awesome, and we've all got potential to grow or to be more than we are today. That doesn't mean that everybody's got to become the next CEO, but we've all got potential to do something more than we are right now. And if we bring that into a work environment, I think really strongly that by developing inspiring, amazing leaders and cool cultures, that's the best way that we can really unleash the awesomeness in people in that way. There are so many things around us that affect us. And two big things for me in work is that is your manager, is your leader, and also the environment within which you work. So if we can help you crack those things, then I think we're doing a great job. What is that job? What do we do? So at Blue Grape, I suppose these are our 6 main service areas. These are the things that we work with our clients with on a day-to-day basis. All, I suppose, for me, has got quite a common theme running through a few of these, and that is people and understanding why people do things, understanding their values, their assumptions and their behaviours, and working with those rather than working against them. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of a flavour as to who we are at Blue Grape. Emily, you've been brave and you've started us off with the chat function. Thank you very much. A few people have joined after I started the webinar. Hi, hello. But also just to let you know, I've just said to everybody, please introduce yourself on the chat function. Tell us who you are and why you're particularly interested in this topic of organisational change. So we've got Emily, who's out there, HR manager in a manufacturing company. Oh dear, you got that. I love that. I need a lot of change that you're attempting to push through. And it's great, always open to learning about the best way we could do that. Oh, bless you, Emily. I can relate to that. I spent a number of years working in engineering organisations. Yes. A lot of change, a lot of things to get done. But do you know what? You're here. That's the most important thing. And I think it's one step at a time. But please, everybody else, be brave as well and do what Emily's done. And just pop your name into the chat function and just tell us a little bit about why you're here. Right, so change, it gets everywhere, doesn't it, these days? And I thought I would start off by, before diving into the detail of how do we make this work, stand back a little bit, I suppose, and just have a little look at the environment, first of all, in which businesses are operating these days. Because the webinar is all about considering change management in a different way. I think before we can jump to that conclusion, we need to understand where is it that we're operating in these days. And first, by looking at how the environment, which most businesses are operating in these days, how things there are changing. And I'm going to show you just next couple of slides that are some research, some information that I've gathered as I've gone along my career. And I think it will give you a little bit of context. But what will give us even more context, again, keep using that chat function, tell us how are these showing up for you in your organisation. So first of all, a really great report. If you're interested in the future, what might happen in the future in the world of work, I'd highly recommend grabbing hold of this report. World Economic Forum, the Future of Jobs report. 2018 is the most frequent research that they have done, but it is absolutely fascinating. And I've just pulled out a couple of bits of data here. So from this report, those companies that were surveyed basically were saying by 2022, they expect 50% of them expect to reduce the number of their full-time workforce. Also, though, at the same time, 38% of those surveys expected to create new, and this is a lovely phrase, I haven't made this up, it's from the report, productivity enhancing roles. Because this report is all about, as it says, the future of jobs, and the big influence there is change, digital change, transformation. But also as well, organisations were planning to expand their use of contractors. Now, this might be showing up for you in your businesses at the moment. It might be what you're thinking about, or it might be the opposite. Just pop it in the chat box and let us know. But that struck me as one kind of, oh my gosh, in really now, what could only be about 2 years' time, we're going to expect to see a huge number of full-time workers, their roles reducing, but at the same time a lot of new jobs being created, and a lot more use of what we've started to call the gig economy, I suppose, and contractors. Then there's another really fascinating statistic I've pulled out here. Top right hand corner, we're looking at task hours. So of the 12 industries that they served, or sorry, they surveyed, I should say, of the way that work is made up at the moment, in 2018, they were saying 71% of these task hours were completed by human beings and only 29% by machines or automation. But they are, and this is the organisations themselves who answered the survey, so the businesses themselves were saying by 2022, they would expect that to have shifted, with only 58% being completed by humans and 42% by machines. Wow, that's going to have a huge influence on the work that is carried out, the way the organisation needs to be set up. Huge difference there. And then the last piece of research here, we've got, again, same report, by 2022, employees that will require significant or upskilling. They were basically saying 54% of their workforce they feel will need significant retraining or upskilling. And of that 54%, 35% might need training that will last up to 6 months, 9% reskilling that could last up to 12 months, and 10% training of more than 1 year. So that's just giving you a bit of a flavour of the type of change that is going to happen in organisations. The organisations are predicting themselves that will happen, and how people are going to be affected by that. Then the report went on to do a little bit more detail around, well, how do these changes, how are organisations predicting that these changes will actually affect jobs in their organisation? And I absolutely love this slide because it kind of floored me almost. And it's showing again how many of these technological changes are going to affect jobs as we know them. And I have circled a few jobs that stood out for me, and I was guessing that might stand out for some of you guys on the webinar today as well. But really interesting point for me to take away here is that although there will be the growth in the jobs, sorry, the jobs that will grow and be more in demand are those jobs that really need those human skills. And although we're going to see more automation, we're also going to see a lot of new jobs being created that are totally suited to us as human beings. Just a very quick deep dive into this slide then. They've grouped together some jobs that exist right now that they feel could be quite stable. Great for us to see. We've got human resources specialists still there. But a group of jobs that are completely new. You may be starting to see some of these appearing in your organisations already. I love the fact that we had people and culture specialists on there as well. So, phew, our jobs could be safe. But look at some of those redundant jobs. They are probably quite a number of jobs that are in your organisations right now. I had to have a little laugh, a little giggle to myself when I saw lawyers or solicitors at the bottom. That's why I've kind of circled those as well. But there is some statistics behind some of this change, and then I think this slide then really does bring to life for me how could that be affecting jobs as we know it. On the one hand, it's great because what makes us human is becoming more and more important. But obviously, some of these roles that could be quite transactional are the ones that are going to start to disappear as well. And probably that's where we're going to start to see the need for reskilling and change in our workforce as well. But again, how is this showing up for you in your organisations? Are some of these jobs that you're familiar with now? Maybe some of the new roles, are you starting to see those coming through? And how do you feel about some of these jobs that could be redundant? How might that affect your organisations? Let's hear from you to try to understand the size or the scale of this. But as well as looking at the environment and how it's affecting change, I also want to see how all of this is affecting what our people want from us as employers as well. So how are our people experiencing these changes? Different report here. This is a report by Hayes, but again, it was also concerned with what they talked about. They called digital transformation. And although the report asked for a lot more information, what struck me was a couple of things here, and that's why I've pulled out this short little bit of information. So if we think about employees, now at the moment, only 9% of employees feel that they are fully supported with dealing with these current and future changes. So of the organisations that they surveyed, only 9% of people feel that actually their business is really supporting them. 34% of staff believe that their employer is not helping them prepare for digital transformation, and 20% say they've had some support, but 14% feel that support is minimal. Now this is different, and this might just be me, but I started to see words that I'd never really seen before when we talked about change, and that was support, preparation for digital transformation. It's quite different because traditionally we've used support. We've kind of looked at that as training, isn't it? With organisational change, if we change something, are we giving people the training that they need? Do they have the right skills and the knowledge to either kind of use the new system or the process, or to do their job differently? But this is something different, and this is a phrase of support, and that for me does really mean more than just training. I think we're starting to see now that actually employees don't just want to receive training to help them get through periods of change. They actually want to feel supported as well. I don't know if that's showing up for you in your organisations, but when I think back at when I worked, as my daughter would say, when you had a proper job, mummy, when I worked for organisations and was involved in organisational change, an awful lot of the people side of change was straight away translated to either training, what new training do people need, or communications plans. And they were the two kind of processes that we really looked at. But if the world around us is changing at such great speed and into such a degree, not a surprise, is it, that we're now starting to hear people talk about wanting support rather than just what is going on and what skills might I need. And when I started to see this research, it reminded me of a quote, I suppose. And there's lots of other similar quotes, I think, out there with this kind of logic as well, and the same kind of message. But the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but it's to act with yesterday's logic. And that's when I started to think, yeah, actually change these days is so different to how we used to see change in the past. And if we just keep doing things in the same way, here, there's another quote almost coming out from here, isn't it? Keep doing the same things in the same way, but in a different environment, we are not going to get the results that we really need. So it started to get me thinking about, all right, what is this support that people are talking about? What does that mean then? And my take on this support is what I would call psychological safety. Now, that's different to physical safety. Do we feel safe at work or unsafe? Psychological safety. But actually, interestingly, our brains treat the two things in exactly the same way. Do we feel physically safe and actually psychologically safe? Our brains don't understand the difference. It's treated back in exactly the same way. So I went back to this Hayes report and I started to see the term positive mental attitude being used an awful lot. And that's, I suppose, what's really led me to thinking about psychological safety. And there's no way, I think, we're going to start thinking about change positively if it doesn't make us feel safe. And these two pieces of data that I thought was particularly interesting so how respondents consider their mindset towards digital transformation. So what was important for people who responded to this survey. Basically, they were saying the importance of having a positive mental attitude or being open or positive. Hugely important, both from an employer and an employee perspective. So here we're starting to hear people now talk about actually what's important to get me through this period of change, and here it's about digital transformation, is I've got to have either an open or a positive mental attitude to that. And that I thought was actually quite different. And that's what got me thinking about, let's think about change broader than just business change. But also, what about the uncertainty that all of this that we're experiencing at the moment in the workplace? It isn't just periods of change in an organisation. How much uncertainty is there actually out there? And surely, if people isn't uncertainty also going to be making us feel, I was going to say, well, psychologically unsafe as well? But then, my mind started to really go from there. Well, now, what is the reality of work? When are there not periods of uncertainty in work these days? When will there be periods of normal? And should we be thinking about change as, I suppose, periods or activities or individual events? Crikey, no. If we really think about how business is these days, there is so much uncertainty or change on an ongoing basis. And that's what got me thinking, then actually, that is probably why traditional change management techniques and methodologies and processes don't work. Because we are not in that world anymore where we have a period of normality, then a period of change to get us through, and then we're back to normality. It is constantly either a period of change or at the very least a period of uncertainty. And that's when I had a bit of a light bulb moment and thought, crikey, we really need to think about change differently here. So I'm just wondering, is that true in your organisations as well? Do you have periods of stability, normality, and do you have distinct periods of change? That's a time where you have to manage change? Or actually, is most of our time now in the world of work and are most of your times in your businesses a little bit of uncertainty? Because there's always something somewhere around the corner. So that led me to my next thought. If we carry on thinking about change as specific events, is that why we're finding making change stick so difficult? And yeah, I thought conventional wisdom does tell us that. What should we be doing? That leaders need to prepare organisations for specific change events. And hey, I've been guilty of that as well in my career in the past. Something is happening, right, we need to develop a change plan. And more often than not, there's a communications plan and a training plan and a plan to physically move people into new jobs. And it had a start point, it had an end point, and it was a distinct period in time. But what if we started to view change or maybe uncertainty as the norm? And then if we started to manage our people as always being potentially in that period of uncertainty. So here, conventional wisdom tells us one thing. Well, I actually think now neuroscience tells us something else. I think we'd be better off looking at this, leaders needing to prepare organisations for continuous transformation, or take away that continuous transformation and substitute that for periods of uncertainty or ongoing change. Sarah, thank you. You've popped something there in the comments, and you're saying, as a digital organisation, purple bricks. Absolutely. Now, I love the way you've put that, because conventionally we think, oh, purple bricks, that's an estate agent, isn't it? But you're absolutely not, are you? There isn't a physical presence, purple bricks, on the high street in an office. Absolutely, you are very much a digital organisation. Oh, and yes, fairly new. So in the process of moving from startup right through to becoming a PLC, absolutely. Your life with that organisation must have just been constant change. And think about then how your employees must be feeling as well. I'm not quite sure if they're employees or would you call them workers as well. I'm not quite sure, Sarah. It'd be interesting to understand. Are your employees, or are they more on this gig economy working for you? But look, if we accept this thought, moving away from conventional, moving towards more of a science or a neuroscience kind of thought, then absolutely psychological safety does become really important, because for people to try new behaviours, that's quite risky. And we're not likely to try new behaviours or be open to new information or change unless we feel safe. And if we don't feel safe, we stay where we are in our comfort zone and where we know things and the way that how the world works. And that's good. So you've got both employees and workers. So yeah, complex. Absolutely. Isn't that brilliant though to know that mixture, employees and workers? So, and if we think back to the research right back at the start, that's probably going to be where more and more organisations are moving towards. That's what the research said. So again, I just think it's another reason for us to stop thinking with our traditional or conventional thinking and start thinking in a different way. But look, I started to touch there about psychological safety. So here's I want to go into a little bit more detail about that and about how our brain responds to psychological safety. So to get the best out of people, I said you need people really need to feel safe. Now, I think I've said that interesting in the past. I said our brains treat physical safety and psychological safety in exactly the same way. And interestingly, our brain also treats many social threats and rewards with the same intensity and in the same way as physical threats and rewards. That's what I mean. We can't differentiate between the two, whether it's a physical threat or a physical reward, or what I say, social. If we're working in a work environment, do I feel safe where I am on a day-to-day basis? And not surprisingly, our brain tells us to move away from either physical or social threats, well, that are threatening, and move towards situations that are more rewarding. Because our capacity to make decisions, solve problems, collaborate, all this stuff we want to see in work, is generally reduced if we are in a situation where we feel threatened. And so we respond in a threatened way. But not surprisingly, all of that good stuff is increased and a reward response. So from an organisational perspective, what we want to do, obviously, then is try to create environments and situations where people feel in this reward state, safe state, and not in this threat state. But big problem is the way our brains are wired, and what has kept us alive for all of these millions of years, is that the pull towards threat is stronger than the pull towards reward. So our brain is always looking for a potential threat because that might kill us. The reward just keeps us alive, and our brains are there wired to help keep us alive, so it keeps us away from threatening situations. So what it means is that it's more common for us to look for and find a threat. And of course, when we find it as well, threat comes on far more quickly, it's longer lasting, and it's a much deeper feeling in the brain as well. So if we've had maybe a difficult conversation, a bad meeting, we remember that far more so, don't we, than when we've had a good meeting or a good interaction with someone. If we've received some bad news or something hasn't gone the way we wanted it to do, that's there in our brains. I had a great day yesterday, but I had one thing that was particularly horrible for me to deal with. And I went to bed remembering that, and I've woken up this morning still thinking about that. And I have to actively remind myself, but actually I achieved an awful lot yesterday as well. That's my natural brain response. And of course, if we're in this reward state, this positive state, we're taking in an awful lot more information, we're more creative, we make better decisions. But what this means for us in work is that we need to be really careful for trying to minimize threat in social interactions. And we don't need to necessarily maximize reward, but the big deal for us is to minimize inadvertently putting people in this threat state by creating a threat feeling. So that led me to think, well, look, if change is the norm, then surely psychological safety has got to become the norm as well. And if this is how we create psychological safety for people, surely we need to start incorporating this into our work and to our leadership styles on a day-to-day basis. But there are some far cleverer people than me out there that realise this far sooner. And this is a lovely model I wanted to share with you. The SCARF model being developed by Dr. David Rock at the Neuro Leadership Institute. He takes this concept of psychological safety even further. And he identifies 5 social domains that we've got along the bottom. We've got status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And these are the social domains that he's found have got the ability to either create a threatening state or to create a rewarding state. And remember what I said, we want to move away from threat, we want to move towards reward, but threat is stronger, but reward obviously for us in work is better. So that makes us then thinking, okay, as managers, how can we use this model? As a manager, really, every interaction you take and every decision that you make has got the potential to either support or undermine somebody else's perceived levels of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And yeah, I said, remember that threat trumps over reward because the threat response is stronger. So what if we, in this new world of constant change, constant uncertainty, made almost kind of the goals for our managers to minimize the threat to a manageable level and maximize the reward wherever possible? What if we help managers develop these skills and, well, I suppose before the skills, develop this understanding and then the skills to manage people in this way, to think about what am I doing, saying, and how am I reacting in this situation? Am I creating a threat response inadvertently, or am I creating a reward response? And that got me really thinking. So I thought, well, let's bring this into a lot more detail of how this actually shows up then in a period of change. And how does it show up to help us make change stick? Well, we've got person there, worker, employee, man, woman, person there in the middle. Organisation around them is going through change or there's periods of uncertainty. What do these 5 social domains mean? Well, a lack of clarity or uncertainty definitely can trigger a threat. If I don't know what is going on, I'm not certain about what's going to happen in the future, automatically I could be in that threat response. Or status, a threat to my status or my job security. Will I still be at this level in the new world? Will I still be able to command the same level of respect? Will I perceive my status to still be the same in the new world? If I feel out of control, I feel threatened, somebody else is making all the decisions that affect me. I don't have that autonomy anymore. I don't know where I fit in, relatedness. Who is this new team I'm now working in? Do I have a team? Can I trust them? Can I not trust them? And then, fairness. Why has my job changed like this? Why isn't anybody else's? Can you see how these 5 domains can really come in and either cause an awful lot of problems, an awful lot of threat, or potentially we could use them to create a lot of certainty and more of a reward social status. So, scarf model, if we can help our managers understand this and bring this into their day-to-day working lives, because we're saying change probably is a day-to-day working experience for us, what a difference could this make? Also, just not from a helping people accept change, but I suppose, the speed of execution as well. Because if people are feeling in this state of threat, well, we're either not going to move to the new world or the new working environment or adopt the changes, or if we are, we're going to do it in a very slow way. And that was another thing that got me thinking as well is, and maybe Sarah, this might be even more apparent in your digital world. Speed of change is also just as important as the ability to change. There's almost arguably no point changing if it's going to take you so long that the competitors have got there ahead of you. So we could look at SCARF around creating an environment where people are more likely to feel comfortable with change, but also more likely to move swiftly and for us to execute change in a speedier state as well. But there's also another model I wanted to show you that can also, I suppose, guide the way that we manage to increase the likelihood of us being able to navigate through changes quickly as well. And this is about insight. So research has shown us that people are more likely to remember an idea if they've generated that idea themselves. And that's what we call a kind of an insight or an aha moment. Oh, yes. Now, do you know what? I can relate to this with my daughter. I can't tell her to do anything because she won't. She's 14. She's a teenager. She doesn't accept that. But if she's come up with that idea herself, oh my gosh, she's straight down that road doing it, yet done because it's her idea. So, on an anecdotal or maybe more of as an informal sense, I can relate to this one completely. And everybody wants to have insights. We might not know that we do, but we do. Because it's when almost like that story falls into place when we can see relationships and patterns that we weren't previously aware of. Oh yeah, that's why we need to do this. And actually, it's really engaging and because insights motivate us in really deep ways. Actually, when we start to see connections between stuff that we originally thought were totally unconnected, well, I don't see the point of adopting and doing this change. When we start to see that, actually what happens is our brain does change. We reorganize our neural patterns in our brain. They call it neuroplasticity. And it actually does change kind of the shape of your brain. But the other really interesting thing that I'm learning more and more about from a brain perspective is that when we have an insight, we release dopamine, and dopamine is that kind of is the pleasure feeling. It's the thing. It plays an important role in our brain's reward circuitry, and it also, as well as giving us pleasure and excitement, it actually drives us to do stuff. It's associated with action as well, and behavior change. And lots of other research as well shows us that obviously that people are more engaged when they seek out answers themselves, when they find their own answers rather than just being told. We kind of probably know that anecdotally. But all of these things put together, if we encourage insights, it releases dopamine in our brain. That's our pleasure feeling. That's our, oh, I feel good about that. But also it motivates us and drives us into action. And we know if we've come up with that idea ourselves, we are more likely to take action and for that behavior to stick. So, hey, how can we apply this concept of having insights into the world of change and change management as well? Again, wouldn't it be interesting to help our managers understand more of this so that they can manage their people on a day-to-day basis, so that we do encourage more aha and insight moments? And, oh, that's why we do things. And I think, insights, it's kind of associated, isn't it, with a coaching style of leadership. So this isn't anything really big or difficult. I don't mean like a professional coach where you traditionally we only kind of really have the budget to send senior people, but actually generally, if we could develop our managers to coach more than tell, they are more likely to enable their people to have insight moments, and insight drives or releases dopamine, drives motivation, creates behavioral change. Again, I'm thinking, hey, what if we did more of this on our day-to-day management of people? Because in this world of constant uncertainty or constant change, wouldn't this be a better way for us to manage, in inverted commas, change and help make change really stick? Again, I'm just seeing more and more things that helps reinforce this feeling of, well, look, the first thing we need to do is move away from a thought that change is an event and change just happens to be the way we are around here all the time. But if we make that change in our thoughts, we then have to make that change in our leadership styles, in our leadership development, in the behaviors that we encourage and that we reward. But it then becomes the way that we do things around here. Okay. Oh, you're a little bit quiet on the chat today, but I'm hoping that some of these things are resonating with you and that you can start to see, oh yes, this is how it shows up for me in my job and my organisation as well. But just actually one other quick thought. Sorry, we can also do more to encourage other people to have insights as well. So I suppose, what am I saying? Yes, do you know what? We can actually train managers, I suppose I was saying, to manage in a particular way so that it encourages people around them to have insight moments as well. So this isn't just something that, say, if we're lucky, we can do it. We can actually take a conscious decision to help our managers manage people in a different way. All of this then is helping us create these psychologically safe workplaces and cultures, which we're saying is such an important part of making change really stick. It got me thinking, actually, when did we stop managing people as human beings and start managing people as resources? Because all of what I'm looking at these days I don't think is anything hugely difficult. It just takes us back to actually our employees are human beings, they're people, they're not necessarily resources. And if we can start to support our managers to see our employees as human beings, work, I suppose, with the way the brain works rather than against the way the brain works, we'll get so much better results for our businesses. And if I bring this back to change, when I think about some traditional change management methodologies, they're based on an assumption of central controlled by management and employees being led almost like children through the change at the manager's pace. But do you know what? I've done that. I've been there as well. That is how I grew up in the world of change and change management. But I'm now starting to think differently. And the more that I work with clients around these type of behaviours in their managers, the more results I'm starting them actually see. And of course, everything these days, for us to gain competitive advantage as an organisation, it's becoming increasingly more difficult. But where we're seeing the best organisations really is those that can respond to change quickly, swiftly, and taking their people with them. So I think there's a real business case here for managing change in a different way, moving away from change as an event to change just as the way that we are and the way that our organisation needs to work every day. But look, I need to bring this to a close because I always try to say 45 minutes to an hour at the most. You're very busy people, and I wanted to give you a quick whistle-stop tour here. So some important things, important things that I think you could start to do straight away as some takeaways, I suppose, because you've invested 45 minutes of your time this morning. I want to at least give you something more than just aha moments, thoughts, but some practical things that you could start doing or stop doing from today. Definitely the first thing for me is stop viewing change as an event. Start viewing change now as the way that we need to be. We can't escape from the facts that are now hitting us in the face around what the world of, or the business environments of the world of work is going to be about in the future. We are no longer going to be looking at periods of change, periods of stability. It's periods of change, or at least uncertainty is the norm. Then let's start thinking about how we can build new leadership habits. This isn't just a one-off change management training course. These two, and it's only two of many models. There's only two models I've looked at today, SCARF and Insights. The real difference will be how can we help managers create these as their habits, the way that they manage around here. So I would say, yeah, definitely take away some of these models, think about how they could be applicable, and how could you start to build actions into your own work and daily behaviours. That one really links back to that creating new leadership habits, either for our leaders, but for yourself as well. As I can see I think all of you on the webinar this morning are HR or people professionals. How can we start to role model this in front of our managers and our leaders as well? But this was an insight moment for me as well. It's, understanding SCARF is just one thing, but my view of this SCARF world, what I find threatening and not threatening, oh crikey, isn't the same as somebody else's perspective as well. So again, another thing that we start thinking about from our leadership development perspective is also, how can we help our managers start to see somebody else's perspective? What I might find threatening might not be what somebody else finds threatening, or more worrying, what I feel is rewarding might be somebody else's threat. How do we encourage our organisations and our managers to see that way and think that way as well? And then I thought, just to finish up, this isn't a throwaway quote. I don't just say this in the, oh, this looks nice. it's actually really worthwhile remembering. The strongest and oldest emotion of mankind is fear. That's probably why our brains respond in such a strong way to it. And also, it's what has kept the human race alive. But also, let's not forget about the fear of the unknown. And almost that's the reality these days, isn't it? All the research we could do and all the surveys that we could have, they are our best guess. Really, we are now starting to live in a world where the future is pretty unknown. And that in itself drives a kind of fear, and arguably one of our biggest fears also. So, crikey, actually, this seems like a really negative way to end this morning's webinar on, well, we're all doomed, it's all scary out there. I hope that's not what you're going to take away from today, but I really do hope that you take away this, why don't we start doing things differently? And change management is one of those. Let's start looking at it differently. As always, I would love to keep talking to anybody about this topic. It's something that we in Blue Grape, we're doing quite a lot of with our clients at the moment. It isn't just you, is it, Sarah, that's going through this constant period of change and complexity. Please reach out to me. Just drop a yes, please in the comments, or drop me an email or give me a call. Have a look at our website. You can contact us through the website as well. I'd love to keep talking with you and better understand what your organisation is trying to do, and if there's any way that we can support you there. I'm very open to cups of coffee and slices of cake. And if we have a cup of coffee and a slice of cake conversation only, that's also fine as well. But please reach out if you'd like to know more. I hope I've given you a whistle-stop tour, but there is so much more that we could do to help you develop your leaders. Give us a shout if you'd like to. Otherwise, have a great day, everybody. Thanks ever so much for your time, and hopefully I will see or speak to you soon. Bye now. Actually, this is helpful. This does make things, that is quite blurry. I need to wear them more often.